Hey, it's No Driving Gloves again. We're joining you, just Derek and I tonight. Will's still in for a busy summer, probably getting ready for SEMA. Heck, that's just around the corner. It just always creeps in there. How you doing tonight, Derek?
I'm doing great. Not a lot going on. Yeah, I've got stuff going on at work that's always pushing forward, but seeing we're coming into the fall and the car show season, at least for kind of my end of things, the museum world is wrapping up. Things are getting a little calmed down, and I get a little more free time.
I kind of envy you. We hit my busiest work week of the year. You guys always joke that I never do anything. Starting next Monday to the through the following Sunday, I'll probably get about 120 hours in, all outdoor. Hopefully, we actually get this break in the weather that they're calling for, and it gets a little bit cool here. Be a lot nicer to be outside with 80, 85, and 90% humidity than this 96, 100 degrees, 100% humidity we've had the last few weeks. But that's the way that goes. On the
Now, is that the Vintage Festival?
Yes,
Awesome. Okay.
all antique motorcycles and that, and a good portion of my job, about 20% of my job, revolves around that and managing the swamp meet, which is grown tremendously this year. We went from about 500 spaces last year to just shy of 700 this year, and a lot of new vendors, a lot of just kind of going to be an exciting year. A lot of people are looking forward to it from what I'm getting from the people I deal with, and I talk to lots of people about it. Just the number of new parts and things that could end up appearing at this. And since I don't have enough to do, as we alluded to in the last episode, and I know we've been really bad in the month of September getting out episodes. A lot of that's on my end. Derek and Will's schedules kept them busy. My schedules kept me busy, and then I've been complaining about technical difficulties with the podcast and our recording, and I've been reaching out to some friends and discussions, and reached out to Steven and Stargate with Better Podcasting and asked them. They do a really good podcast on hobby podcasting, and if you want to get into this hobby, give them a listen. Listen to their first 5 episodes. They basically tell you how to do a podcast, and I'll admit, a lot of what I know is because of them or them guiding me to finding the answers. There's still a little bit of research, and they use it, or Steven uses this setup, and he runs the Gonna Geek podcasting network, and he uses a setup, and I took some of his advice and spent some time at Guitar Center and that, and ended up buying us a new board. Significant investment. This is almost becoming professional as opposed to a hobby on my end. But when you hear this episode, let us know if you think the sound quality is any better, or if the transitions are better. I just actually got the board in this afternoon, hooked it up. I don't have the best cables on that. I actually had to order, $100 worth of cables now that the board's here. And Derek and I are giving it a try tonight, giving this a rundown, and hopefully this works better, and this will allow us to have up to 5 different people in 5 different locations across the country on the episode, and we can start putting out those interview podcasts. We've promised you for over a year, so look for about late October. I'm on kind of a new No Driving Gloves to hit the airwaves, and a little bit better sound quality, hopefully, and a lot better guests. If you want a guest, if you've got an idea for a guest, let us know. Be sure to start telling your friends about us. The listenership has been growing even in this time of us being tardy with episodes. So that's my little pitch and filling everybody in on the background in No Driving Gloves. And is there anything special going on your end there, Derek, or do we want to just kind of jump into tonight's topic, which we might be late to the game, and we're going to try to do it in a non-political discussion way, but
Oh, that's no fun. No, there's not a whole lot going on. I I should say that car show season is slowing down, and it is. But I should mention that I will be on the road again in November, headed down to Tampa Bay, Florida, November 10th and 11th for a new concours that's been formed down there called the Cigar City Concours. And we're going to be actually bringing our unrestored 1958 Corvette. Talk a little bit about preservation, probably over restoration while I'm at the concours. And I think everybody knows I'm a big proponent of that in the hobby and the museum world. That'll be an opportunity to probably catch one of us on the road for any of our listeners that are down that way. So that is coming up, John.
Yeah, and I think this podcast is actually going to drop a day or two late, but I'm going to try to hit the Atlanta Concours the last weekend here of September in just a couple of days. So I guess I'm talking in my future, but in your past. So that time traveling of podcasts that we're involved in. So that keeps us.
See, and that's unfortunately you've missed John at the Atlanta Concours, but that's the way he likes it. He always announces it on a podcast where you can't actually meet him at the event he's going to.
Yeah, kind of the way Will did. Now I'm drawing a blank. Pigeon Forge and Derek did Old Car Festival. How they slipped up there and hey. But we'll go ahead and slide into. I say we're a little bit late to the game on this, and I know Derek and I have talked about this topic a little bit in the past, and it kind of came to the forefront for me when I was buying my Transit Connect a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, whatever that was, and discussing with the salesperson and my girlfriend and that Ford's new marketing plan that they really started in 2019, right around the corner, and by 2020 supposed to fully implement it. Of, quote, not selling cars, which seems to be a radical idea. And I'm going to voice a little bit of my opinion on it. We'll voice some of Derek's. And I can kind of agree with where Ford's going, looking at, the black and white, the dollars and cents. A lot of money, a lot of profit in SUVs and trucks. That's what everybody wants, it seems. The safety factor is greater in those vehicles, especially when you're in one of those vehicles. You really don't want to get hit in your small car by a big SUV. But then again, if we didn't have all the big SUVs, a small car wouldn't be such a bad deal. But I it's an interesting plan Ford's got. I really agreed with it when they were going to import the one vehicle, which now with the new import taxes and duties that the government has started with. I'm not going to get into that too much, but Ford having to drop that smallest, least expensive vehicle out of its lineup, they might need to reconsider, in my opinion, one of those small cars. Is with the EcoSport, or I can't remember the name of their smallest one. A little bit smaller than the Escape now. That vehicle starts high teens. It's just I want to say it's an interesting conversation or thought process that Ford all of a sudden says, hey, we're going to do this. And, when Ford did aluminum bodied trucks, everybody said, hey, what are you doing? This is aluminum and it doesn't work. And, General Motors whines about it, and Chrysler or Fiat whines about it with their trucks, and they're going to do all steel trucks, and now they're talking about their upcoming aluminum offerings. So is this foreshadowing of the future with Ford dropping cars? I've got a Ford van. I've had a Ford pickup. Derek drives a Ford pickup. So we're into that, but frankly, my Taurus is a great car, and it's roomy, and I think with a little bit of marketing, it would sell. I think part of Ford's problem in selling cars is they don't stock or advertise them properly. Everything's advertising a truck or a Edge or an Explorer. But nothing ever advertises the Taurus or really the Fusion. People know about the Focus because it's inexpensive and, kind of in that import scene. But you're not selling the cars. It's like when Scion had the I can't even think of the name of it. XBXA, the small little smart light car. I can't remember what the name of it was. You couldn't. I wanted to look at one back when I bought my Fiat 500. I wanted to look at one, but no Toyota dealer or excuse me, Scion dealer stocked them. So how are they ever going to sell one if I can't go look at one? It's not a vehicle that I just really want to order on a brochure and an internet article. It's something I would like to get into and maybe compare against a smart car. Granted, that car might not have worked, but if the dealers and the sales staff don't have the vehicles to show, they're not going to sell. And it's kind of the same way with the Ford product line. I had to buy my SHO at a Ford dealer that different than I normally buy my Fords at, because the dealer I bought my last 3 or 4 cars from didn't stock SHOs. They didn't see a reason to. So I had to drive down the street to another Ford dealer. And do you know what that did? It cost him the Transit Connect sale, because I bought that off the same dealer I bought the SHO from. But if they could have sold me an SHO, I probably would have bought my Transit there. So it's just an interesting little game that Ford's playing. Do you have any thoughts or anything on that, Derek, or are we going to quickly shift topics?
I've got a bunch. First thing I want to start with, you said something really interesting a moment ago, and that was that dealerships are not stocking certain cars, and this is a little off topic. It made me think, because you were saying, I want to go there and I want to test things and I want to see things and I want to know how it feels. But is that because we're car people? Is that because we still love our cars and we still want the vehicle that fits right for our lifestyle and that we're comfortable in the world that we live in today, where everyone just goes online to Amazon or something like that and just orders their items? Well, I need that, so I'm going to order that. Are the dealerships starting to move, and some of these companies starting to move to, well, the car is becoming more and more and more just an appliance to people, therefore we're not going to stock everything, and if they really want this tiny little Scion or this tiny little Mazda 2 sized car, they can just order it and get it in and they'll be happy because they don't really care. It made my mind go there. I don't know if we want to get into that tonight, but I think that might be a sign of the times. Back to the Ford topic at hand. I find it interesting. I mean, clearly, like you said, they're playing obviously to their market. We all know F-150s are the best-selling truck. Ford takes great pride in that, and they know that's where the money is. So is it a big surprise? Probably not. I have to agree. As you say, there's, what's going to happen with the entry level car. But I also have to wonder if there are other factors at play behind the scenes, because at the same time, maybe what was it? Maybe 8 months to a year before Ford's announcement of going to all SUV, crossover, truck, type vehicles, GM came out with their announcement that they would be moving to an all-electric, green fleet of vehicles by, was it 2025? I think was their goal. I don't have the article in front of me, but we all know that the industry talks. I mean, people within the industry talk. They know what's going on. Are there factors at play here where if, GM is saying they're going to go to an all-electric, green technology fleet of vehicles, does that mean they're moving to primarily cars and electric, small electric vehicles, and Ford will be the company that you go to if you need your larger, SUV or pickup trucks? And I mean, is Fiat Chrysler even going to be in the game in 10 years? So I also wonder if there's some factors like that at play where, Ford and GM just know, hey, you've got that cornered, we're going to corner this, and the world's going to be a splendid place.
It does leave a lot of the market, I think, open for everybody. It's just, I agree. Is the Fiat Chrysler of America going to be around in a couple of years? Is this everything going to get consolidated? Maybe it will. Maybe Ford's looking at purchasing some car manufacturer or merging with some car manufacturer. Somebody threw out to me that Hyundai is going to be the one that takes care of FCA for us in the end. But it's, like I say, I agree with Ford's business model, but I'm not sure or business plans or whatever we want to call this. I'm just not sure it's right.
Well, if you want to get, or if I can get sarcastic about it for a minute, I would say I give it about 19 years, because that was the run of the Ford Model T, where all Ford made was the Model T. Granted, there were different versions of the Model T. There was the runabout, there was the touring car, there was eventually a truck version. There were light duty and heavy duty, but they made the Ford Model T. And it was pretty much the same car for 19 years. And by 1924, 25, the company was not doing well. And by the time they shut down to convert everything over to build the Model A, they were pretty close to selling the company off to other investors that wanted to buy it. So the sarcastic historical answer would be, I give it 19 years, John.
Well, I see your point there. It's, I don't know. Where are we going to be in 19 years? I mean, at that point, it could be flying electric cars that, run on the, with their flex capacitors and their, I can't think of the name of whatever our food processors are that convert, vegetable waste into energy. But it's, in 19 years, if we had a discussion, Derek and I, before the podcast, talking about Bob Lutz, and Bob Lutz is even in the agreement that 15 or 20 years, we won't have cars. Everything will be an Uber or Lyft or something pod that comes and picks us up. And, when no driving gloves, when we're all near retirement age, we'll be talking about the good old days of, hey, remember when Ford went to just trucks? And that was a pretty good idea because that allowed him to develop the people mover. And I had one of them people movers come and pick me up. It's just
now all of our Detroit listeners, John, will have to comment back that the people mover has never worked in Detroit quite right. So we hope people movers don't become a real thing.
They were always interesting at Dulles Airport too. You want to talk about making somebody late for a plane? You got to get on the bus, and so much nicer now. You can walk terminal to terminal.
Yes.
But I was thinking people movers as minivans. So we can thank Leo.
Well, I just, Detroit, home of Ford, you people mover in there, again, a little bit of sarcasm for the evening. But no, again, going back to this idea, and I think it just shows how interesting of a moment we are in the automobile industry, because we are seeing these major announcements from General Motors, Ford Motor Company, about changing the idea of their fleet of vehicles, what they are making. And it is clearly an evolution towards something, but we don't know, as you say, John, we don't know what that is quite yet. Is it going to be pods and vehicles that you don't have to drive and all those things, or is this just an evolution of companies so they're not directly competing with each other in the market, rather they're taking kind of I don't want to say control, but they're kind of taking over the markets they're good at, rather than, again, trying to compete, Chevy truck against Ford truck. I think there's a lot to be seen, and even in the aspect of if it is an evolution towards something else, or I think we're at an interesting moment in time in automotive history. I mean, doing what I do as a curator, we're at some moment of evolution in the automobile industry. I don't think any of us know what that is yet or what it's going to look like. Is it in 20, 30, 40 years, pods and little self-driving contraptions that you just ride around in? Or is this GM and Ford figuring out what markets they're best at and just agreeing in some way that, well, Ford, we're going to over here take the SUV crossover truck market, and GM is going to move to this fleet of electric vehicles, small cars, things like that. And it's just a brilliant plan to have these companies be more successful in the markets they're good at, especially after they went through and struggled through a recession 10 years ago that they had to come out of and build back up out of. Or is this, I guess, the third, kind of prong of this could be, is this an experiment that's really wrong, and in 5-10 years we're going to see a change in strategy again? So I think we're at an interesting moment in time in the automobile industry, and kind of seeing what's going to happen, possibly even similar to, let's say, the, you know, Great Depression, 1929, 1930 through the World War II era, where, we saw a number of automobile manufacturers just start falling by the wayside. And, the Great Depression and that whole situation decimated some of those companies. And then, of course, after World War II, we had fewer automobile companies left, still more than just the big three. But then, federal safety standards start coming in on things, and different federal regulations, which started wiping out some of the smaller companies. It was a very interesting time, say, for that 20 to 30-year period of companies just disappearing, to get to where we've essentially been for, say, the last 50 years. So, it's going to be interesting, I think. And I'm interested to see where things go. I'm a little scared because I'm a car person. I like cars. I like getting in my car. I like driving my car. And I think in the episode we talked about the Bob Lutz comment on, the future of not self-driving vehicles. I probably will be the guy that gets arrested a lot because I'll be driving one of my antique cars on the road when it's illegal, and I just won't give up. So it's an interesting time, and what Ford is doing is going to be interesting. But as you say, John, it kind of sucks because there's no affordable Ford car out there that you can get into. Maybe you're going to be able to get an affordable Chevy and drive that around. And then when you decide you want to step up to a truck, you make the leap over to Ford. Brand loyalty is going to be hard to get because, most people, brand loyalty comes from working up through as you can afford more and more valuable vehicles. So is this going to hurt brand loyalty as well when they do this?
I think that's a thing that let's start that all over. That's one thing Ford is, in my opinion, obviously abandoned, is there is absolutely no brand loyalty in their eyes by going all trucks, because if you want that car, you change and you've got to go to a different brand. Or if you are a 16-year-old and your parents are buying you a car, or you're a 16-year-old working at the local fast food restaurant making whatever it is, $8, $9 an hour, and you've got to make a car payment. And, right now, okay, you can go out and buy a used Festiva in that. But in 10 years, you're not going to be able to. You're going to go out and buy whatever Chevrolet Cobalt, Cavalier, Aveo is current for them. So you're going to go out and buy that car, and that's going to put you in that Chevy mindset. So is your next car going to be a Chevy? Ford's gambling that no, you don't care what brand it is. You're going to buy you're eventually going to move to that Ford vehicle. And obviously they've abandoned the brand loyalty. Where if you jump into the higher end people, they go, no, there's brand loyalty. We want everybody in our car. And that's why we have Mercedes SUVs. That's why we have Lamborghini SUVs. That's why we have Ferrari talking about an SUV. It's why Porsche introduced an SUV. Rolls-Royce has their new SUV coming out, and they don't care. They've even said they don't care. We're not looking for new customers. We expect Rolls-Royce customers, our customers, to purchase this vehicle and enjoy this vehicle irregardless of the price, because people are brand loyal. And if people that can buy anything in the world are brand loyal, why all of a sudden is the middle class not brand loyal? And that's one of the big things that the girlfriend and the Ford dealer argued to me, and I hadn't really thought about. And I don't admit that I'm wrong often, but they might have been right in that 10 years down the road, there's not going to be an inexpensive small Ford necessarily car-wise that somebody wants to learn to drive in. It's going to be the Escape, or I call it the EcoSport. I can't remember the name of it. I apologize. But those are going to depreciate down there, but it's still going to be a little bit different, in my opinion, than buying a Festiva for your first car, or buying a Fiat 500 for your first car, or even buying a small C-Class Mercedes as your first car. It's different when you're buying an Edge or an Explorer and such as your first car. And I've driven through some high school parking lots in the last couple of years. I've driven through the rich high schools, and there are a lot of nice cars. There are some SUVs, but it's still a bulk cars. And same thing for the middle class high schools. It's definitely more cars than SUVs. Being in Alabama, there is a few pickup trucks in there, but I think they're abandoning a lot of markets in there for that brand loyalty question that we started on. I think they've abandoned it, and they just think people are going to buy whatever suits their fancy that day. And going back to your online purchasing thing, are you going to buy something completely different for $30,000, or are you going to buy something you're kind of familiar with? Again, if you have a Gen Air in your kitchen, a lot of those people stick with Gen Airs. It's just, it goes that same way. When you buy Colgate toothpaste, it's always you pretty much always buy Colgate because you're brand loyal. Even if they're out of the gel, maybe you get the scope with whatever. But it's, yeah, I don't follow a lot of what Ford's doing there.
Well, and I think you alluded back again to the comment about buying online and appliances. Again, as I said earlier, we don't, within the industry, we know some of these people talk, and we don't know what is probably going on behind the scenes. But in the kind of path you were taking there, John, it almost seems like maybe Ford is thinking, and GM are thinking, well, people are just looking at cars as appliances, and if you want a truck, well, you just go get a truck, and if the only truck available is a Ford, well, that's what you're getting, because you need a truck, you need that appliance. Here's what's offered. Okay, that's what I'm going to get. It could be that we're headed that way. I hope not. As you say, John, and I mean, I like to have choices. I want to go out and look at the new Fords and look at the new Chevys and make my decision. Notice I didn't throw Ram in there. I liked Ram at one time, and I owned a few Dodges, and I don't know that I'll ever own another Dodge again. But I digress there. It's a concern because, and I think it speaks to the deeper problem that, I think we've talked about on multiple episodes, and hey, let's talk about it again. And one of the reasons John and Will and myself started this podcast is we don't see the younger people getting into the hobby or getting into cars. And that is what's going to destroy the industry. Because if there isn't a passion out there and there isn't the people saying, no, I want choices, I want this, I want that, then the industry is just going to go the way that they feel they need to go to survive. And we're going to have less and less options. And it's going to get bland and boring, in my opinion.
So I guess we're both on the page that what is Ford doing, and is it the right decision? And we both, I think it's a wrong decision as far as the collector car hobby, which is, of course, supposed to be the focus of the podcast and the betterment of it. And I think it takes a lot of the passion away, and like we've said multiple times in this episode, it makes it an appliance decision. And it's looking at it a little bit deeper than, oh no, I can only buy a pickup or an SUV or a van at Ford. We are excluding the Mustang. We're both very much aware that Ford is going to continue to produce the Mustang as the only car in the lineup. But what does that mean in 10 years? Is it all of a sudden going to be an SUV Mustang, say, in 10 years?
Definitely four-wheel drive. Definitely.
I think you have to go that way. I mean, with Dodge making the Challenger all-wheel drive now, I think you're going to see everything's going to go that way, especially as we, have electric Mustangs and things like that in the future, and it's really easy to do all-wheel drive vehicles. Now, I understand you were joking. Maybe.
It was. But I mean, it is true that, and even with a sports car, with the electric, especially in any electric situation or hybrid situation, having the control, especially if they work it where it's, basically an intelligent four-wheel drive where it can read what's going on. I mean, the way better performance. I mean, the performance capabilities are outstanding when you get into that. But again, it was a joke. But we can talk about that kind of stuff on another episode. But yeah, keeping the Mustang, the kind of niche sports car, muscle car. I shouldn't say sports car because it's truly it's a muscle car in the definition of different types of vehicles. Again, Ford's looking at what their market is and what makes them money, and that's where it's headed.
Took a pause there thinking, well, they never said what they're going to do with the Ford GT. Is this the last generation Ford GT, as much as they screwed up this release of the vehicle this time around? But again,
do we really want the Corvette curator guy to get into the GT? Do we really? The big question is it even a Ford?
Granted. But I was just working for a donation so that you'll be able to do a comparison between the mid-engine Corvette and the 2017 Ford GT.
I mean, if anybody out there would like to donate their Ford GT to the Corvette Museum, I'd be happy to have it for those reasons.
So, yeah. See, I did that, set it up. Now we can get some talk back on the podcast like you do more Mondays.
Yeah.
Corvette Museum wants a Ford GT. But
yep.
So I don't know if we accomplished anything tonight. Just trying to get back into the groove of things. But A lot of butts tonight. You're not going to hear them because I'll edit them out. But see, another butt. However,
but I think we did accomplish something, and I think it's that, again, that common theme of our podcast, which is if we, in the collector car, antique car, whatever we want to call this hobby, the collector car hobby as a whole, I don't want to exclude anyone, the hot rods, the street rods, the antiques, the classics, the whatever you're into. We have to make sure that our voices are heard. We have to make sure that what we are looking for in cars is heard, because if the car people don't speak up, if the car people don't say, hey, why are you doing this? We want options. We want this. And we get that a lot of it is market driven, but take into consideration some of this. It's just going to keep going in whatever direction they kind of take this. And I know we try not to ever make this podcast political, but that's what will happen is we will just be led into, well, this is what we're doing. And the sad thing is it's possible that the majority of people growing up today that are younger than us, the younger generation coming up, maybe they just don't care enough about cars. Maybe that's not the next generation's thing. And maybe some of us grumpy old men have to accept that. But, I'm sure there were people that didn't want the horse and carriage to go away. But it would be, in my opinion, very difficult to accept and very sad if we completely lost the automobile as we know it.
Damn you! Now I'm all of a sudden thinking back in the 1800s when, and I can't think of a stagecoach. Studebaker manufacturer goes, we're going to quit building stagecoaches and we're going to go straight to horseless carriages. And I'm sure the podcast of the day back then, no driving suits or our dust smocks. Those guys were sitting around discussing, well, what do you think of Studebaker getting rid of the horseless or getting rid of the carriage and going strictly for these motor-driven machines? And that's what we're doing today, is we're discussing the potential of the future. And no matter how crazy it sounds, it all affects the hobby. No matter every little change, every little thing that happens, whether electric cars, fuel cells, Ford going to trucks, the turbocharging of every motor in America, anything, Porsche going away from pop-up headlamps. It all affects the collector car industry and our hobby in the future. And hopefully we'll get into some more of these topics and you go, why did they even get into it? Because it all affects the collectability of our automobiles and the fun and the enjoyment. And, you have the two eclectic guys talking to you tonight. Derek with all of his pre-war stuff and me with the stupid, crazy, ugly, gremlins and rampages of the world. I think it's all important, and why like I said, I think it was a decent conversation. We pointed it out, and I want to know what your opinions are out there. And Derek does, and we'll touch back on it. I will go ahead and apologize. I talked in the beginning about some audio quality. We had a couple little issues with the new PC rig I have, not the new board, and we'll have an edit oops or two in this episode maybe. But I think Derek and I are going to call it quits, and we'll talk to you in about a week. You good?
That sounds good, John.
So you good with that? Then I'm out of here.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.